This technology, the capital, the know-how is available today in the United States. Not tomorrow, not a week from now. We can provide those electrons.
Since Donald Trump resumed the presidency of the United States, it's become evident that the fossil fuel lobby is driving American energy policy. As you may have heard by now, the recently signed into law One Big Beautiful Bill Act gives wind and solar generation the short end of the stick. The time developers have to cash in for tax credit availability for both technologies has been shortened significantly, and a follow-up executive order from the president further imperils such projects. Senate revisions to the initial House bill repaved longer runways for ITCs and PTCs on hydro, geothermal, and nuclear energy, a relief to many, including the battery energy storage space, which was also lumped in with those technologies. But in solar, particularly on the distributed generation side, people have a right to be disappointed and upset. SEMA, SEIA, AEU, ACP, and alphabet soup of industry advocates floweth over, all coming out in support of treating solar power with a little more respect. But no matter what happens in Washington, the states have their own say, and stuff is still coming online, particularly community solar projects. Several states have recently either opened the door for or reworked their programs, recognizing the benefit of renewable generation close to the communities that benefit from it. On this episode of the podcast, we welcome CEO and co-founder of Aspen Power, Jorge Vargas, the strong voice for the industry, who shares his insights on why community solar is so hot when politics can be so cold. We had this talk as the budget bill was crossing the finish line, so some of it might sound a little outdated, but trust me, Jorge's sentiments remain the same. I'm Paul Gerke, and you're listening to Factor This. You may have heard about Aspen Power in the news lately. They're one of those companies that's getting stuff done. A distributed generation platform that's closing on a lot of projects and pushing solar through in a time that's not necessarily friendly to solar in some places. I'm proud to say I'm joined on this episode of the cast by Aspen Power co-founder and CEO Jorge Vargas. Jorge, thank you for taking some time out of your schedule to talk with me today.
Paul, thank you for having me, and super excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, for those who don't know about Aspen Power, I guess let's start there. What are you guys doing right now, and what makes you different from everybody else in that space?
Sure, no, happy to expand. So Aspen Power was founded 4 years ago on the belief that we wanted to expand access to solar and create a very large independent power producer. We are backed by the Carlyle Group, one of the largest private equities in the country. And we are in 19 states operating more than 200 projects, distributed generation projects interconnected at a distribution utility. And we are, our goal is to provide discounted power to municipalities, businesses, and consumers. We don't do residential solar. The way that we provide power to consumers is by selling them community solar subscriptions. So we're very active in the community solar segment. We like it. We've been doing this for 16 years, so a lot of us are veterans of the solar industry, and we have been working together in one way or another for 16 years. So it's been an extremely rewarding experience. As you mentioned also, these are not the friendliest of times for developers and IPPs, but I tell you, we've been through a lot of these cycles. We have been through times where the IRA was going to lapse. We've been times where the Trump tariffs that happened last time. So we are, in our business has to make money in Democratic administrations and Republican administrations. So we're nothing but resilient. And one of the things that I see is, in this environment, we provide discounted power. We continue to do so. And if the bill does go in a way that is shaped right now, it will curtail development. We would inevitably raise power prices, and we'll probably wash out all the incentives. So, it's unfortunate. It's, in the U.S., we are known for having a very stable regulatory policy, for making, a very business-friendly environment by not changing the rules every few years. But unfortunately, we're in this time. But I'm excited for solar. We can still operate and provide our services, not at the scale that we wish we would have had, but at least our business is not dead in this environment.
I like your style. I like the cut of your jib. You're just pulling the gloves off right away. We're just going to get right into the one big, beautiful bill act. No sugarcoating it, talking about friendly stuff that Aspen Power is working on. You want to talk policy, and I don't blame you right now because I feel like this is kind of a pivotal time for that side of the clean energy space to stand up for itself and say, hey, we're not some scam that can be cast aside. And listen, whether or not subsidies are the right thing for the market is a different conversation, but we need every electron we can get right now, Jorge. It seems like a really bad time to be casting any sort of shade on solar generation in particular.
Any type of generation, right? And you nailed it, Paul. With the advent of digital computing, with the advent of, of AI, we need electrons, whether they're from gas, whether they're from solar, whether from wind. Not coal though, because coal is dead.
Yeah, well, we can leave the fossil fuel interests alone. They've got enough lobbying on their side.
Exactly, but it is an interesting time to do this, and from our standpoint, we've always known that incentives were going to go away. I mean, I'm a one-trick pony. I only do solar. I've done solar my entire career. I've been both an investor and a developer of solar projects. And I've been in this for about 16 years, and I knew the day was going to come where incentives were going to go away. And I think it's coming, right? It is, candidly, it is time. The only thing we ask is we do, not in a hasty way, not in a political way, not in like, oh yeah, we cut everything without being thoughtful. There's a lot of capital. There's, by count, just in the state of Maine, $2.5 billion went into solar DG, community solar DG generation. We gotta be able to have an off ramp to this. We can't just cut stuff. So because capital is fickle, right? And these are very capital intensive projects. And I should say the other thing is, all of our projects are financed by tier 1 financial institutions, not any government agency, not like a state-owned government bank. Everything's private capital. And I think our balance sheet on the last time I saw, we have about 1.5 billion in assets in 4 years. So that just shows you the growth that we've experienced. And we were continuing to grow, and we will continue to grow moderately, even if the incentives go away, because our product sells. Businesses and people want the electrons, and also we provide them at a discounted to prevailing rates. So those are very, very strong value proposition, and we will be here. Now, it's going to be a little more challenging when the ITC goes away, but I run models, we can still provide a level of savings for our customers. Not as much as before, but I'm confident that we'll still have a business.
For those of you listening who haven't been following the progression of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or ABBA, I guess is a little easier to say, the version that passed the House was actually probably a little more of a poison pill than the version that just came out of the Senate, the draft released about a week ago. In the Senate version, the off-ramps for solar are a little more lenient. The House version, it was like 60 days after it passed, you needed to have a shovel in the ground. The new version, it's till the end of the year, December 31, I believe. What does that do for you, just having that extra 5.5 months to be able to sort of stack projects and try to take advantage of these tax incentives while you still can extract the full value of them?
Yeah, it's actually a little more than that. It would actually allow the tax credit will step down.
Right, for 3 years, right? There's like a slow deceleration.
Exactly. So that's okay. That's what we want, right? Like a phase down, a property phase down of the incentives. The House bill was preposterous. Also, hidden in there was a provision that's called FEOC, the Foreign Entity of Concern. That one was very problematic, and still in the Senate bill, still a little. If they've expanded it. And the House bill was 17 pages, and the Senate bill is 32 pages. But that one is really challenging because the supply chain of power manufacture of anything, of gas, of solar, of wind, it is a foreign supply chain. So having to track every single screw where it comes from and potentially something trip you down, that is not acceptable either. So we just have to have common sense. We just have to have earlier today I was watching. Some tweets from Elon Musk, who's been very, very advocating a lot and highlighting that in China, All sources of electricity is combined. Solar power in China will exceed all sources of electricity combined in the U.S. in 3 to 4 years. China's getting
I
it.
believe it. Yeah.
They need the power. And we, on the other hand, are saying, no, no, no. You know what? We're gonna slow everything down. And I'll tell you, Paul, and all the power curves that I see across the country, meaning the forecasters of power prices, and the underlying assumptions were a significant portion of that new entry from renewables. Once you cut that, and I mean PJM, ERCOT, NYSO, once you start saying I'm going to curtail all of this development, those curves are just going to skyrocket, and it's going to be really painful for businesses and consumers because power prices will increase, and that's a fixed cost that will hit the bottom line of a lot of companies. So in an age where we're doing that, I just hope that the Senate has a little more common sense. And what's going to be interesting is the Chip Roy and the House Freedom Caucus are saying, I'm not signing anything that doesn't change. So this is going to be a battle royale. But I'm hoping that, in the U.S., I've always been, and I'm an immigrant. I came here for college and then got a job and married my wife, and I'm in the process of becoming a U.S. citizen. I always admired, this was not like Ecuador where I grew up. This was stable. This was thoughtful. This was, nonpartisan. And here we are. But, I'm optimistic still because of the fact that we need the electrons. So we will be there to provide them. And as one of our board members says, markets always reward the people that show up with a product. And we will continue to show up with a product.
Your product is a little different, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, than the typical offering in the residential solar space, which we've written about a lot on Factor This and a lot of other esteemed outlets as well, about how much that space is struggling right now. And the big legacy players are having a tough time keeping the lights on and really are needing to reinvent themselves to probably get their pricing down to somewhere in the $2 per kilowatt hour. And that's difficult for a lot of those companies, and they're having to lay off a lot of folks and restructure things. On the other side of that coin, though, seems to be this infatuation with community solar, and rightfully so, picking up more so in the Midwest and other states. We're seeing it move in legislation in places like Minnesota and Ohio. Those distributed generation projects that don't have to connect to the big transmission grid and deal with long interconnection queues are being pushed through. And even in places where there's local resistance, what's the magic behind what Aspen Power is doing, Jorge, that allows you to sort of still get stuff done at a time when everyone else is maybe a little more hesitant?
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Paul. So look, community solar is a very, like the name itself, is very community oriented, right? So when you go with these landowners, in many cases they're farmers that have had their land for many generations, and farming is incredibly challenging business. The margins are tiny. When we can go to their land and say, listen, I'm going to pay you a lease payment. I'm going to give you rent me or lease me a portion of your plot. You can still farm on the other side because, as you know, there's no moving parts. Our stuff sort of sits there. Just the sun comes out, generates electrons. We're good to go. So in many instances, that income allows farmers to either keep their farms or supplement their income, and they're able to survive in this day and age. So that's what we have a lot of strong community involvement. We deal directly with these landowners, and we pass on some of the economics that we receive from these community solar incentives onto them. So I was just in Pennsylvania in one of our sites, and the woman was it was hilarious. She was like a Trump T-shirt, her dog, like she dog did tricks, do you like Biden or Trump, and the dog said Trump, but and she was the biggest advocate of solar farm leasing. She showed me the furniture she was able to buy with the lease. She told me that they were the crop that that had been building for many years. It was becoming more fickle with weather, with climate change. So this allows her to have a fixed income, and she's able to try different crops on the other side. So that's what it enables us to do, is the fact that the fundamentals are very strong, that the economics are sort of shared among local residents, and also that power is also consumed within the community. Because community solar, the way it works is you get a net metering credit. The power goes back into the grid and you get a credit on your bill. So in this case, this woman was able to, but she was also highlighting how the power stays within this region. So it's hyper local. So I think that's what resonates, and that's what this. That's why these solar farms are so impactful, and the fact that we can get them done in this environment. It was actually apolitical. Like I was, it was great. We did a testimonial on her. It'll be on our website, but once you see it, it's pretty strong.
No, you make a great point, and there is something to be said about harvesting the land in a different way. It's not a false sentiment when you hear folks say that. A lot of these plots, you don't hear this pushed from the other side, but a lot of these plots, like you mentioned in this instance, maybe aren't producing crops like they once were. You can't just milk the same patch of dirt over and over again in perpetuity. It needs to be tilled under. You need time. And these farming communities, there's a tremendous amount of land that's legitimately just not being used. And I understand the argument about wanting to preserve our nation's farmlands, and that's the drum you hear pounded on the other side of this argument. I don't think, in my conversations with a lot of folks that do what you do, I've ever heard of a successful one in which there wasn't active engagement with those stakeholders on the ground, and positive ones at that. I imagine that you probably have a lot of positive things to say about the farm owners that you've worked with that go beyond a simple anecdote, and these are folks that you continue to work with for many years down the line, right? Because you're still operating these facilities. You're responsible for them.
Absolutely. We enter into 25-year leases with 2 5-year extensions, because the useful life of our solar plants is 35 years. So yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, listen, we have really good relationships. This stuff is also pretty stable. One thing about solar is that, after 2 years, if you build it correctly, if you use good equipment, after 2 years, it's just pretty much set it and forget it. You do have to do maintenance, you do have to do O&M, and we do all that. We have a very strong O&M group, which, by the way, is also very local. In regions like in Georgia and Pennsylvania, we have our own crews that service those farms, and it's hyper local. So they like the fact that there's no one's flying there. Everyone can go and react, and things happen, like transformers blow up. Sometimes people drive into these accidents. So it's having a local community and having a group that is not from California. If you're in Georgia, someone from Georgia coming in service is extremely powerful, and that's what people like. That this is very hyper local, hyper community based solar power generation. So we do have a really strong relationship, and candidly, they're our customers. That's who we service, right? We sell the electrons, and then we make the last non-payment. So it's super. I love to go to the field and meet these people. And many times I give them my phone number. I say, hey, listen, any problem, call me. And I was in last time I was in a ribbon cutting, and I did that. One of my investors from Carlisle was with me. He's like, I can't believe you gave that woman your phone number. I was like, you know why? Because it's actually good, and there's not a lot of problems. Like, she's not going to call me.
Yeah.
Like,
and the way that goes for trust, the bridge that builds, it's worth it.
Totally.
It's funny that to even think about it in political terms sometimes, because it does seem apolitical, especially in a time of load growth where we need energy. And do you think that China is expanding its solar generation by not using farmland? I mean, just like, I hate to be the devil's advocate, but do you think they're preserving farms in China to get all those massive utility projects onto the grid? Like,
oh my God, no, China's told. I mean, I admire China. I actually like.
Yeah,
China
I know we're not supposed to say that as Americans on a U.S. platform.
I've seen some monstrosities there. I've seen whole mountains built with solar.
Incredible engineering out there.
So it's unbelievable what they're doing. I mean, they know that the AI and digital computing race will be won by chips and power. I mean, that's why actually some of the data center coalition, Microsoft, NVIDIA, they all came out and they say, no, we can't do it. And they've been lobbying hard the Senate because they've said they see it, right? Like, the customers know it. The big data center users, they're like, wait, you mean to tell me I cannot enter into PPAs with solar because it's very curtailed? And in big, massive utility scale, where half a penny means a lot, that's where the ITC is really meaningful. Us in DG, we're a little less, we have more price elasticity because we're offsetting retail rates, right? So my PPA is not 5 cents. In many cases, we're selling power at 12, 14 cents a kilowatt hour. So, in that sense, I'm a little shielded, and I'm very lucky that we're in that part of the segment. But some of my peers from the utility scale, is really scary what's happening there. And I've seen figures of 75 up to 85% of projects being curtailed as a result of this legislation. So it would be a real pity. I'm very hopeful on what the Senate and some of the lobbying they've been. I've been in a lot of briefings over the last week where a lot of good market participants have been showing up with actual data to Senate staffers. And I'm hopeful that in this reconciliation and this drafting, we'll see more clarity and this like orderly wind down of these incentives.
Yeah, otherwise, I'm not really sure how we get here to there to meet the load growth knocking on our door.
I mean, like, what's going to happen is that they're going to see what happens. There's going to be a massive pullback. Power price is going to go up. Everyone's going to be complaining, and they'll be like, oh, you know what? Sorry, let's go back to this.
Hey, you're talking to somebody in PJM territory who just saw his prices go up 20% for a power auction last July. I was writing about it. I told my wife, I was like, our bills are going to go up because of this. And then when they just did, she was like, wait, is that the thing you were telling me about last year? I was like, yup, and there's more to come.
No, I'm telling you, it's a real pity. And look, for those of us that have solar in our home, and with the advent of storage, I'll tell you, I live in Colorado. My solar bill used to be like $300. I just had delivered my Tesla power packs. I think it was like $6 last month.
That's incredible.
So like storage and solar and storage is such a strong value proposition for consumers and businesses.
You involved in a VPP out there? Rocky Mountain Power?
I live what I preach. So I actually have my own VPP.
Oh, nice.
I live in I'm completely islanded. I do have a natural gas backup because my wife was like, I live in Aspen, Colorado. If I freeze to death in winter because of your science experiments here, I have a problem. But no, I have geothermal, energy storage, and solar, and we're completely off grid.
Wait, hold on. We got to back up a second. I know this is all about policy and solar, but this is very cool to me because this is the bridge between the commentator, broadcaster type, and the people who actually know how this stuff works and how to put it together. And I am fascinated by the idea that you have a badass home setup. What made you put this together? How did it start? Like, what? Take me through the nerdiness a little bit, because I'm sure there are some listeners who are piquing attention right now.
For sure. So like for most of my career, Paul, I've been in New York City.
Okay.
So I've always been in an apartment. But 7 years ago, we left Wall Street and moved to Colorado to work with this family office managing an investment. And when I came down here, I was like, this place is breathtaking, right?
Yeah, gorgeous
out
there.
I want to build a home. I want to, this is where I want to grow up. And then we built a home. And then I realized, you know what? This is my only chance that I have to really preach what I do. So did a bunch of research and immediately found out that we have actually a really good geothermal resource here in the Roaring Fork Valley in Aspen. So we only have to dig like 20 feet for the geothermal well. Then obviously I have to put solar because solar is what I do. And then recently we were waiting for the batteries, but they just came in. So now the whole system is able to function. And it's amazing. I mean, it knows when there's a weather event coming. So it knows to harvest the battery. So if we got a bad thunderstorm, the batteries always are charged. So you didn't have to do anything.
It's hands off.
Like,
you can just let it run.
Yeah, let it run. So it charges 100%. You get a notice saying, we're not going to discharge. And so the way it works during the day, the solar charges the battery, and at night it discharges. And I only have 3 power packs, and primarily because all my heating and cooling is done with my geothermal heat pump. So it all came together. It was, when you're building a house, it's actually easier to go in and retrofit it. And my builder was like, I've never heard of this before.
You want what?
Oh no! The first time we had to service it, it was hilarious. Someone ccame in and opens the door and he's like, "What is that?" I was like, geothermal heat pump. You never see one?
Nope.
So we had to fly someone from Denver. Luckily, it doesn't break that much, but it is a little bit of a science experiment. But it's all that America is: energy independence. It's it's creativity. Is everything tied into it? So yeah, I'm fortunate that I live in this home. I went a little bit overboard on the stuff, but like I am confident that these days, like production home builders can do this. Yeah. So I have a soft spot for residential solar because I used to be the head of solar at Morgan Stanley Commodities, and we did close to 8 residential solar funds with all the big players. I didn't do one with Sonova, but I did it with almost everyone else. And it's always been, it amazes me how you can really control your power and really control your electrical bills by putting, solar panels that you don't have to really service that much. or enter into a lease. So it's a pity that, obviously this bill completely guts that business, right? And that business employs a lot of people, a lot of local installers. I mean, I feel for my local installation company, it's very hard on them. I was talking to the CEO the other day. He's like, we're basically gonna have to shut down all residential solar and just focus on C&I. So it's the job angle is gut wrenching, and there's the solar industry also employs a lot of veterans that do this. So I'm just gutted by it. I really feel for Resi Solar, and like you said, they're gonna have to really work on, and Resi Solar is getting a bad rap of all the solar incentives and commissions that people get because it's a door-to-door business. But there's some good players out there. There's some good companies that act ethically, that are going to have to really restructure their business to get up $2 per watt. That seems to be the magic number.
Yeah.
But Paul, in general, I'm a capitalist, and I know that the fundamentals are there. We just got to go through this adjustment period, and we will survive.
That's actually, I'd love to ask how. What is that path to survival from someone who's played in that space for a while? I mean, the numbers are one thing, but I think there's more to it than that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're going to have to. It's also, I think, is one of those moments that companies are going to have to grow up, right? So when we've been growing really fast year over year, and as a result, there's a lot of soft costs that sort of creep up on it. I'll give you an example, like this tax equity financings that we were mentioning before for the investment tax credit. Very easily, a legal bill can be $1 million, very easily. So you have to do like $50 to $100 million transactions to amortize such a big fees. In a world where that's not there, then you won't have those fees, right? It always amazes me how, if you look at the roster of top law firms in the country, a lot of them work in solar because they're super lucrative. It's very legal intensive. But as these incentives go away, people are going to be more sensitive to every dollar that goes into it. And companies are going to say, a lot of this crazy, this picks residential solar for a second, right? All these crazy commissions, they have to disappear, right? Because you're going to have to drive your costs. So I think the market is going to take care of itself. When something sort of extricates, then I think the industry is going to have to say, okay, less commissions, more, let's focus on soft costs, and let's really provide a service to the customer that is the lowest cost. And I think companies will adapt. I mean, there's nothing like a crisis for a company to adapt. Yeah. And I think that's what's going to happen here.
I feel like battery storage has got to be an important part of that resurrection too, because there's just so much more utility. And I mean, listen, I don't know when you're getting that electric pickup truck with the bi-directional charger to add to your microgrid setup, but once that shows up, it's going to make those Tesla Powerwalls look like nothing.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, the one thing about living in Aspen is that I have to. I live in Aspen, but I work in New York City, so I'm in a plane every week. I do have to drive a lot to the airport, so electrical cars don't really work for me that much. And I have 2 little kids that are ski racers, so we're always going to ski racing in massive snowstorms. So we haven't made the leap yet to electrical cars, but we will eventually. And then you're right, I'll be able to not go to a gas station, not pay gas, and I just needed to go a little higher range for me to make the transition.
It sounds like we're there. I'm super interested in it. My house is set up for the EV charger. We don't have one right now, but I feel like once that bidirectionality is more, omnipresent and part of the product itself, and so you're basically buying a home generator plus potential participation in some discharge program where you're being compensated, it just seems like a no-brainer, even if they do get rid of the $7,500 tax credit, which is another thing that the Senate opted to keep in their version of the bill.
Yeah. Listen. The electrical vehicles are a game changer.
Yeah, I don't want to drive you down that road, no pun intended, but while we're on it though, anything else that stood out from you in the Senate's draft of the Big Beautiful Bill Act? Because I feel like that's so top of mind for everyone in our space right now.
Yeah, I also hope a big one there is the FEOC rules that I mentioned earlier. That needs to be spelled out more clearly. I mean, listen, as it is right now, what people don't know that in order to qualify for this investment tax credit right now, you have to keep all your serial numbers of all your major components. We do that right now. So tracing them through this FCC is not going to be that much harder, but it will add more complexity. So there's a lot of compliance that we do right now that we will have to strengthen if this bill goes through.
Is the language still ambiguous to the point where it could be like intellectual property that you're trying to steer away from too? Because I remember there's some concerns out of the House bill where it's like, did you take this idea from a Chinese individual? Like, it seems really sticky.
It was, I mean, the House bill was terrible.
Yeah.
The thing was and it also was poorly drafted and very confusing. So you couldn't really make heads or tails. Like even like the smartest regulatory lawyers that I talked to were like, we don't. This reads like really fucking. And I don't know if you had a chance to read one of those bills, but my general counsel, you just don't read a bill.
Yeah.
Like you actually have to go and like, it takes hours and parse it. And it's very very funky language. But yeah, I think that the Senate tried to make it more explicit. I still don't have the full analysis. I'm supposed to get an analysis any day of all the details, but we're hopeful that that's been spelled out in a better way so that we can comply. Paul, at the end of the day, we just want the rules to be clear, and so that we can play with it. I totally get it. Listen, we don't want to be fomenting or fostering child labor or or using materials that have been banned. I get it. Like no one wants that. Like our stuff is there's so much scrutiny in what we do because we get bank debt into these things. We have lenders. We have, in my case, I have the Carlyle Group, right? A blue chip investor who wants all the reporting, everything in compliance. So we will do that, but we just need to have a set of rules that are written very clearly. Just give me the rules and we'll comply with it. Don't give me, like the House bill, which was like a soup. I don't even know how to describe that thing.
Yeah, this comes full circle. It's kind of what you were talking about at the start of the conversation, where just clarity and structure is what we need, and we'll live around it. It's the uncertain investing environment that makes somebody like the Carlyle Group, I imagine, a little more gun shy to get into deals because you don't some weird fiat concern 3 years down the line crops up and all of a sudden all of these investments are a mess. I could see their hesitancy, and I could see how this stalls the very thing that the energy dominance side of the conversation is extolling right now. Getting stuff online faster seems to be the move. And one more thing while we're on that, I wanted to touch on community solar just holistically. I did mention that it seems to be catching fire in other places, but you would know better than I would. What's the sentiment like for community solar nationwide right now?
I mean, listen, it's pretty strong. There are markets like New York and like Illinois who are just continue to be resilient and strong markets. Maryland. I think the fact that we are in many of these community solar regimes, you are floating with retail rates, meaning that you have exposure. If in the event that power prices go up, you have exposure to that. You're not fixed. That is we can call it a bright spot in the market, right? Investors are saying, if power prices are going to go up, I want to put money where I'm exposed to that. So that's the reason why I think a lot of the stuff is still being developed, is still being done because the economics are pretty strong. The challenge with community solar obviously is like it is hyper local, and sometimes developing a community, while you're not interconnected into a big ISO, you still have, especially in New York, for example, every county in New York has its own solar ordinance. So you have to, we have a project in New York in a town that's taking us about 4 years to build 15 megawatts. And it was mostly driven by the permit, the local permit. So interconnection tends not to be a big issue, although we do get hit with occasional in some markets like grid studies that may delay us. But for the most part, it's the permitting that drives this. But investors are looking at the space. They're seeing also the fact that we are offsetting retail rates. Our projects are not super thin, so they're pretty predictable. They might take a little long time, but you still, if you underwrite something at let's just pick a number, 10% IRR, generally speaking, given that how the economics worked out, that project by the end ends up being 10%. So there's a lot of predictability into the financial models that make community solar work.
You guys dabble in agrivoltaics at all?
We have one project in Massachusetts where you have a tariff that is very attractive, but in general, the answer is yes. What I've seen is that it just takes a long time to develop those projects.
Yeah.
Right? So Do I want to spend 3 years on an agrivoltaic project, or I want to go spend 1 year, in Illinois?
Yeah,
So
it seems like it's dependent on where you are. I've had some conversations with developers like Doral, obviously having a lot of fun with the agrivoltaic side of things, and logistically it makes sense, right? Free lawn care and better for the land, for the farmers and everything. But that's a great point that there are probably all sorts of. I bet it's different state to state too, trying to wrangle
Massachusetts
literally.
have been sort of the one that paving the way for affordable takes, and they've done. Actually, there's a couple of my competitors have done some really nice installations. Look, they're beautiful, right? There's these huge canopies, and you have cows or sheep grazing underneath. It's really nice. It drives a lot of impact, right? Very mission driven, but it just takes time. In our business, we're rewarded by volume, right? Like we our business has to do 150 megawatts a year, and depending on the average size that is you make the counts. But in we tend to look for the projects that are going to be commissioned the fastest, and we do a fair amount of work prioritizing those projects. And that's what this business is all about prioritizing. It's like something's delayed, go ahead, switch it with that one and move it because we gotta get the volume out.
That makes sense. And you've been pumping out some volume lately. I know 10 projects in Pennsylvania. You acquired or moved some stuff around, closed on an Illinois portfolio. Tell me a little bit about those projects and what's next for Aspen Power.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Pennsylvania is a great market for us. We really like it. It's actually a market that is an energy market, right, with a lot of oil and gas development. So what we've experienced there is a very good positive environment when it comes to permitting. Things don't get hung up for a long time. And then we like the PJM tariffs, right? So the projects are very strong. So we just finished and completed 10 projects there. They're all about 4 megawatt AC a piece. They're all commissioned, and it went relatively straightforward. So we like that. We have another 40, I think, coming online in the next 6 to 9 months. So we're doubling down. We haven't reached a point of saturation, but I can see it. In a portfolio that is 400 megawatts, if you're more than 150 in one market, you start getting heavy on the concentration risk. So we not yet, but we may have to start looking at our concentration limits there. But for now, we're still open business there. We are acquiring several portfolios right now in Illinois. That's the new beachhead where we are gonna same thing, go in and acquire 10 to 20 projects. We already own about 5, so we've had our initial step there, but now we're doing more. And then Maryland is another state. We are, obviously have some early stage development opportunities in markets like Ohio, stuff that is coming up down that. But right now, those are our key markets right now.
Is there anything holding you up, or are things kind of still moving along despite the uncertainty with tariffs and with the budget bill, or are things a little slower right now from your perspective?
So. That's a good question, Paul. So we're business as usual, right? We are continuing because we don't have the luxury to just stay. The development cycles are very complex and long, so we don't have the say. Oh, you know what? Let me just wait till I see the bill. Like that doesn't work, right? I have like 80 employees that are have to be fed. We are being very cautious in the new deals that are coming in. We are making sure that we have some protections embedded into it as far as that. We're also in the process of acquiring several operating portfolios, which obviously are more accretive right now, given that they don't face this development uncertainty, right, and construction timing. But I would say we have to be, one of the things that I learned in being 16 years in the industry is you got to be really careful in times like that. Doesn't mean you shut down, but you gotta have off ramps. You have to watch your cash. So as a result, this will impact our growth for 2025, but only in the new stuff. We're executing on the stuff that was contracted, which is a lot, and then being very cautious as to what the new deals that are coming in the next few months.
To put a coda on a 35-minute long-ranging conversation, it sounds like from your perspective, Jorge, solar will survive because there's a market for it and there's a need for it. Anything you want to expound upon there, and maybe a full circle message for the audience listening, maybe a call to action perhaps, as we try to sort out what the future of the industry looks like?
Yeah, look, I want to put so I think distributed generation solar will be fine, just because where we play, right, in retail rates, and in this world where, you know, power capacity increases, we'll have all of that, so it will offset the loss of that. And I by no means wants to disparage my colleagues in utility scale or resi solar. I love those businesses, great. I just don't know as much. Sure. I just know that I've looked at my financial models. I've you know, said, okay, remove that, remove that, and let's see how it looks like, and we still have a business. But listen, it's what we've been talking the whole conversation, right? We need the power. We are a power-hungry country. And if we want to dominate in AI and in digital computing, you're going to need every single electron that is available right now. We can build solar plant, Paul, in 6 months, right? In 6 to 9 months. You cannot do that for gas. You cannot do that for coal. You cannot do that for any other. Like this technology, the capital, the know-how is available today in the United States. Not tomorrow, not a week from now. We can provide those electrons. So I think at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen here. It's going to be a big shock. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If this bill and similar nation go, it's going to be hard, but it won't kill us. And for people like us, like at Aspen Power, we're just going to have to work really, really hard with all our partners, our EPCs, our lawyers, our landowners, and really, really try to trim every cost so that we can continue to operate. But I'm confident that we will.
You make a lot of great points. I feel like we could continue this conversation for a long while, but I'm going to cut it off here. Jorge Vargas, co-founder and CEO of Aspen Power, really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure. Really enjoyed talking to you, and always happy to talk solar. I can geek out anytime.
And your home setup, because we're coming back to that.
If you come to Aspen, you come and I'll give you a little tour.